Hello and welcome to this talk. My name is Ernestine Gheyoh Ndzi. I work for York St. John University, so I'm the course lead for law. But I want to be talking to you today on a topic that is quite close to my heart. I've titled it, I Am a Woman, a Mother, and an Employee. I am basing this talk on my research area, which is about shared parental leave. So I will be very much looking at shared parental leave and looking at women returning to work whilst breastfeeding and how that can impact on the topic that we have and what is expected in terms of support from the employer in the workplace. So, as an overview, I'll be looking at or talking about shared parental leave, breastfeeding, of course, and women returning to work while still breastfeeding, and women returning to work because they've taken shared parental leave, even though some will return to work not simply because they've taken shared parental leave, but they could still be breastfeeding as well, and how they can be supported in the workplace. And I'll be basing my discussion on some of the research findings that I've done. So I'll be looking at the challenges that mothers may be facing, and we'll be discussing about the support that will be required to get women going. Now, just as a background to this, before I talk about shared parental leave, women are very much from time immemorial been looked upon as primary caregivers. So they are much looked upon like they are almost like their place should be at home, caring, having and caring for babies or caring for family members, looking after the kids, making sure they're fine. And this has been something that has been there from a very long time. Women have had to fight their way through a lot. For example, starting from trying to get themselves into the labor market, trying to get the employers to look at them and treat them the same like they treat the men. We've heard so much about gender pay gap. We've heard so much about discrimination. We even have the Equality Act 2010 talking about equality and trying to see how that balance can be achieved. But even at that, women are still unfortunately very much looked at as primary caregivers, whilst men are looked upon as the breadwinners of the family. So, what we'll be talking about today has its background from time immemorial. So, it's much more about the woman trying to, or what I'm trying to say is to bring to the forefront the fact that women have very much moved on from that position where they are regarded as family care or caregivers or primary caregivers, and most of the times been regarded as to stay at home. So we've seen the picture of what used to be women considered as primary caregivers, but really the truth is women have moved on so much. Now, if you look at the picture that I've just put up there, women are not only primary caregivers, they are still primary caregivers as much as more men are taking up that responsibility as well. But women are also in the labor force. They contribute immensely into what is happening in the economy as a whole. Now, when you look at some of the statistics that I got from the ONS, in 2019, 3 in 4 mothers had dependent children and they were working. What does that tell us? It tells us that a woman has, or women have moved away or have developed so much, and they are not just only those caregivers who are expected to care for the elderly, have children, and look after them, but the women are also working and contributing immensely to the household as well as the economy. Statistics show that by 2015, we had a third of British working mothers being the breadwinner of their families. Now, there is an argument out there that this doesn't mean that it's only women where in a family where there is a father figure present. It could be a single mother as well. But the key point here is that they are the main breadwinners of the family. So the point I am making here is that whether they are single mothers or they are in a family unit situation, the key point is that more mothers, more women are being breadwinners of the family. So that traditional view of looking at women as primary caregivers and almost like their place should be at home has changed significantly over the years. However, it looks like with the change that is happening in terms of women getting more involved in the labor market and doing much more than what was initially looked upon to be able to do, it seems that the society, even the workplace, most workplaces, it seems they are very slow in embracing the modern woman as it is. Now, the shared parental leave, what it has, shared parental leave, the potentials of shared parental leave is one of the things we'll be considering, but shared parental leave really is the law that allows the mother to be able to share her maternity leave with the dad of the baby. Now, this is a law that can help because, as we're talking about, this will help the society as well as the workplace to start to embrace the fact that more women are contributing to the economy. It also means that more dads will be able to take off more time and develop bonds and spend more time with their children. So this is a very, very important law that came into existence since 2015. So it means that can no longer only go for 2 weeks paternity leave, they can go for much more. But the choice is that of the parents to decide whether they want to take shared parental leave. Now, for a mother taking shared parental leave, it means that she's cutting short her maternity leave and returning to work much earlier than she anticipated or would have loved, not would have loved to, but much earlier than what the 52 weeks standard maternity leave allows. Now, returning to work, especially for breastfeeding mothers, could potentially pose a lot of problems if there is no adequate support in place in the workplace to support them. Now, for breastfeeding mother, unfortunately, we really don't have a legal document that is it's quite clear on how the workplace should treat breastfeeding mothers. It tends to come much more on the health and safety, and it talks about the fact that an employer is expected to conduct a risk assessment on any employee who is coming back to work after maternity leave and intending on breastfeeding. So the employer is supposed to provide suitable facilities. And when we talk about suitable facilities here, if you think of a mother who is breastfeeding and returning to work early, she will be thinking about a private room where she can go and express breast milk. You're talking about a fridge, or the private room should have sockets. You're talking about fridge to store the milk if she needs it for her baby later. Talking about an on-site nursery if possible, and breaks to help the mother go and do what she needs to do. So these facilities are to include all of this and much more where possible, and to provide a safe and healthy environment for mothers to express and store their breast milk. Now that is what we have much more on the health and safety regulation. Now, if this were to be done, obviously mothers will feel well protected and well supported to be able to go back to work or return to work whilst breastfeeding and carry on breastfeeding. However, we're going to turn on to some research evidence to see whether mothers are actually really receiving this support that they very much need in the workplace. Now, I turn to a research that was done by the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills in collaboration with the Equality and Human Rights Commission in 2016. And they were looking into discrimination that's associated with pregnancy and maternity leave. Now, some of the findings we're going to look at is pretty shocking in a way, but not very much, I'll say, not shocking based on the background that I explained earlier. So, what they did was they surveyed 3,254 mothers and 3,034 employers. And some of the findings reflect that 70% of the employers felt women should declare upfront during recruitment if they were pregnant. Now, if you were to talk about equality, this is very, very worrying because having to declare whether you are pregnant could suggest that the employers could potentially make a decision that will not probably go in your favor. They could make a decision as not to recruit you. 27% felt pregnancy put an unreasonable cost burden on the workplace. And this term, unreasonable cost burden, or that phrase, makes it very uncomfortable reading it because it simply means that although, like I explained earlier, the modern woman hasn't really been embraced. That aspect of a modern woman hasn't been embraced. So they're still looking at women as the primary caregivers. So they're thinking that if having to recruit someone who is pregnant places an unreasonable cost on the workplace. 17% believed that pregnant women and mothers were less interested in career progression and promotion than other employees. Now, this may not be the case because there is evidence to show that women are still not supported in the workplace. Now, if a woman is not being supported in the workplace, she will be forced to almost make a choice or having to choose between her work and her family. And in most instances, women will choose their family. And this could potentially obviously come across as if women are not interested, but the underlying point will be a lack of support. Now, 7% of the employers did not think mothers returning from maternity leave were as committed as other members of the team. Now, we're talking about breastfeeding mothers returning to work. If a breastfeeding mother isn't supported, isn't provided with the facilities that they need, obviously they're going to come across as if they are not committed. This is because they will need time to go and express the milk somewhere, or they will rather work part-time because they want to pay more attention to the child, and this could well come across as not being committed to their work. Now, the contrary, looking at what the mothers said, 77% of the mothers had experienced some form of discrimination either during pregnancy, maternity leave, or after returning from maternity leave. And again, this goes to show the previous points we've been talking about that discrimination is a very obvious point of lack of support. So, where there is lack of support, obviously, mothers are not going to feel like they want to be part of or they are quite part of the workplace. 11% of the mothers felt forced to leave their jobs. There has been growing evidence demonstrating that parents have been moving from employers that are not supportive and not family friendly to employers that are family friendly. So it is very important. And 20% had negative experience related to breastfeeding. And on that point, we then switch to the research I have been doing, looking at breastfeeding mothers and how and returning to work. So what I did was I surveyed 649 women And 93.8 of them agreed that breast milk is the preferred choice of feeding for their babies. So they would like to breastfeed and as well as breastfeed for as long as they could potentially be able to do so. Now, 26.9% took shared parental leave. Now, this is quite low, but there are other elements attributed to the low uptake of shared parental leave, which we will not be able to cover in this particular talk. 81% returned to work before their baby was 6 months old. Now, if these mothers returned to work before their babies were 6 months old, most of them, almost all of them, because I think it was 93% of them returned to work while still breastfeeding. Now, that posed a lot of challenges, or could potentially pose a lot of challenges, where the workplace isn't offering enough support to enable these mothers to continue breastfeeding. Now, of all these mothers, 46.2% were provided with private rooms and sockets at work. Now, the private room was going to help them, of course, but the problem with private room and sockets only with no fridges is that you will express and you probably have to throw them away because you will not be able, or mothers will not be able to store the milk and take it back home for their babies when they're finished work. 14.7% were provided with fridges for storing breast milk, and 6% had on-site nursery, which was very handy because then a lot expressed the fact that they could just go to the nursery and breastfeed their babies when they needed to do so. Now, 2.9% had all the facilities required to support breastfeeding at work. Now, the interesting thing here is that it's only 2.9%, given that the modern woman, like I said, has demonstrated that they're more than capable to be primary caregivers as well as um, being contributors to the economy. The women or mothers need much more support, much more um, guidance, much more, in general, much more support from their employers, which 2.9% alone seem to demonstrate that that's not coming through. Now, what was most interesting is the fact that 49.8%, that's almost 50% of those that I surveyed, said they had absolutely no support for breastfeeding at work. Now, if they have absolutely no breastfeeding support at work, it puts a lot of pressure on the mother, and the mother will therefore have to be thinking about whether they want to continue breastfeeding whilst they return to work or give up breastfeeding whilst they return to work. Now, with all this, there's a lot of impact. It poses a lot of impact on the mother. And we're going to talk about the impact of lack of support on the mother alone. We're not going to touch, obviously, it has an impact on the employer as well, but I'm going to focus more on the impact on the mother. So, a mother who wants to breastfeed for as long as she wants to, for the obvious reasons, because breastfeeding has enormous advantages to the child and to the mother, and there are several research pieces out there that supports this point. So where the mother wants to return to work but yet hasn't got that support that she needs in the workplace, this will be forcing them to choose between work and family. And in almost every instance, mothers will prefer to choose their family. And if they choose their family, they will have to let go their job. And letting go their job, the employers then will start to draw conclusions based on the evidence we saw, research evidence we saw. They will start to make conclusions thinking that mothers are not interested in job progression or they are not interested in doing their jobs well, which obviously it is not true. It's just the lack of support in the workplace that is pushing mothers to make the choice that they make at what point in time. This also has an impact on breastfeeding rate. It is already well documented that the UK has the lowest breastfeeding rate. Now, for mothers who choose to go to work rather than stay at home, it means they will have to give up breastfeeding because the lack of support for breastfeeding mother in the workplace makes it almost impossible for a mother to still carry on working and be breastfeeding. So mothers who choose to go back to work will obviously have to stop breastfeeding, and this has this is just contributing much more to this already significantly low breastfeeding rate in the UK. For mothers who choose to obviously stay at home, it means they will delay their return to work. And delaying their return to work, they will miss so many opportunities like promotion opportunities and so on. Again, there has been a lot of research that demonstrates that mothers that go on maternity leave are easy targets for demotion, are easy targets for redundancy and the rest. But this is all because there's lack of support. So where there is a good support structure, all of this can be handled. It will affect staff confidence and trust because mothers starts to feel that the employer is all about what they do for the employer and the employer not valuing who they are and the job that they do in the workplace. And obviously staff turnover, then you start to see mothers looking for employers that are more family friendly, that are more ready to support them, and they will move to those employers. Now, if these are all the challenges being faced by mothers and given the modern woman, what is the way forward? Now, the way forward is, first of all, for all employers and even the society to embrace the idea and the impact of a modern woman. Because, yes, she is a woman. Unfortunately, there's nothing else she can do apart because of the fact that she's a woman. She is a woman, and yes, she will make a family if she wants to make a family, and yes, she is an employee. She cannot let go any of this. It's tied very strongly to who she is. So the workplace should support that point, support the fact and embrace the fact that the modern woman has moved on from the ancient woman perspective, or that they used to think that she's only or good or she's only there much as a primary caregiver. Workplaces should provide a clear policy on breastfeeding at work and integrate it within maternity policy. A lot of workplaces don't have a clear policy, and women feel nervous and sometimes almost insecure to go and ask about breastfeeding arrangements in the workplace. This should be clearly provided in the policies that is available at the workplace. Workplaces are also called upon to signpost available resources within their institutions. So, for example, breastfeeding rooms and the rest. Now, I have had experience where I've been to a place to ask for breastfeeding room, and I've been shown a sneaky room or a hidden away room somewhere. Now, for for the institution or any workplace to have a good engagement and good support, it starts from a clear enough signposting. Make it clear that this is a breastfeeding room. Even if you want to put it somewhere you think mothers will be comfortable to go in without anyone realizing them, but it should be clear. The sign should speak for itself that this is a breastfeeding room, and allow mothers to freely access that without the guilt of thinking about what the reaction will be if they start to ask for the availability of such rooms. Also encourage dads to take paternity and shared parental leave, because as many dads that start to take shared parental leave, it will start, the message will go through much more that the modern woman is not who they used to be in the past. Their job is not just to be primary caregivers. They are also contributing to the economy. In effect, they are who they are. She is a woman, she is a mother, and she is an employee, and she deserves to be supported in every way possible. So just to round this up, and thank you very much for listening. We have moved on as women. Women have moved on a lot. So the call is for everyone to embrace the modern woman. Thank you for so very much. If you have any questions for me, or you want to know more about the research that I do around this area, my email is on screen, and I'm also on social media. That's on Twitter, and my Twitter handle is there. And I've got a website I'm working on shared parental leave, and I'm uploading stuff on there. So thank you again so much for listening.